exciting. Welcome, everyone. All right, so we're going to go live in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope that y'all had a great weekend, nice and relaxing and re-energizing, and you're ready to tackle this week. I hope you're as excited as I am, because this chat has been on my countdown for at least 2 weeks. I've been so excited to host this chat. So whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a repeat guest, thank you so much for joining us today. And we will jump right in with some housekeeping, and then I'll get to introduce you to our amazing speaker, and we'll start with your questions. So like all of our virtual events, today is all about our audience members, our attendees. We want to make sure that the time you spend with Power to Fly is time well spent. So to that end, you are incredibly enthusiastically encouraged to participate. You can do that in a couple of different ways. You can come off mute to ask questions, comment, add context if yours is one of the questions that we're going over. If you do come off mute, either, if you have your cameras on, that's what will show up on the live recording, or your avatar, your display name, whatever else you have going, that'll show up on the live recording. Now, if you have any kind of privacy issues and you don't want to show up on the recording, not a problem, you can still participate. You're just going to go over to the Zoom chat, and you're going to send your questions, comments, anything like that in the Zoom chat. If you are if you want to submit any kind of anything and you want to be completely anonymous, just DM it to me, Meg-Power2Fly. You'll pick my name from the drop down in the chat window. So instead of sending it to everyone, you'll send it to me, and I will raise your questions and we'll keep you anonymous. Like I said, today is being recorded. So we are live streaming to our website, and the recording will be posted on our website as well as on our YouTube channel. So if everybody that registered for today's session, whether you stay for the full 60 minutes, you only drop in for 5, or if you are watching from the future because you registered but weren't able to join us today, hi. Everybody that registered for this session is going to get a link in an email about 1 to 2 business days that'll allow you to rewatch today's recording. So you don't have to worry about taking notes, or if you didn't quite catch what somebody said, you can always review the recording later. Now, if Charity says something absolutely amazing and you have got to tell somebody or send it to a friend, a coworker, a family member, whatever, if you can't wait the 1 to 2 business days, you don't have to. You can, like I said, go over to our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly, and you'll be able to find the recording there, usually within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of today's session. Now, I also recommend while you're there that you check out our YouTube channel. You can find a ton of chats from our various summits that we've had. We post those recordings of the panels and the discussion sections and all that kind of stuff later on. So they've been kind of being posted throughout the rest of April. And you can also find all old recordings from past chats that we've done, all kinds of stuff. You can also subscribe. I highly recommend it if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of these great chat and learn sessions without cluttering up your inbox or worrying that you forgot one. And you can also check out our our whole back catalog and video library at our website as well. So like I said, if you do want to check out our social, we are at Power to Fly on YouTube. You can also connect with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. We are at Power to Fly on all of those. You're more than welcome to take pictures or video as we go, so you can share on social media that you are learning with Power to Fly today. Again, tag us if you'd like. We'd love to feature you. We also use the hashtag Power to Fly. So let's see if I have anything else. Oh, so if you do want to come off mute to ask questions or whatever, awesome, love that. Just make sure that you are trying your best not to interrupt Charity or any other attendee that is actively speaking. Me, you can interrupt because I get paid to fill the silence. So please feel free to interrupt me. Now, if you are going to come off mute to ask a question, whatever, that's fine. Just make sure that you're only coming off mute while you're actively speaking, and then you go back on mute. You'll see me do this constantly throughout today's chat because the bulldogs under my desk are very loudly snoring. So if you do get muted, that's the only reason why. It's not that you can't participate. Please feel free to. It's just we're just trying to make sure that the background isn't distracting people from you all here who's speaking. Yeah, okay, so to get us into our introduction here, I'm really excited to introduce you to today's speaker. Charity Collier is an advocate for mental health and emotional well-being. She holds a bachelor's degree in exercise physiology with a certification in addiction counseling and a master's in mindfulness studies. Charity combines her threefold education by bringing a mind, body, and spirit connection to her teachings. She currently teaches meditation workshops, meditation groups, and one-on-one emotional well-being with clients from all walks of life, not exclusive to addiction. So welcome, Charity. We're very excited to host you today. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that introduction or anything at all?
Thank you so much for that great introduction. I feel like you've covered it all. I'm just so happy to be here. I think it's a great way to start our work week as looking at mental health. So maybe a little hashtag of mental health Mondays, right? Getting started our work week. Just kind of talk a little bit more about my background. I worked in the city of Boston in the homeless shelter, working with people with mental health for about 5.5 years before I moved down to Savannah, Georgia, where I now, besides doing meditation workshops and mindfulness workshops and one-on-one, I am actually working with the county to help people with mental health in the criminal justice system as well. So I'm very involved in mental health all we can for everybody. So I'm really happy to be able to have this conversation with everybody today.
That's so awesome. I think that's really great. It's a lot of times it's people that are in crisis or at, kind of the extremes of different parts of our society that definitely could use mental health support the most. And it's unfortunately one of those things like we were talking about earlier that kind of gets dropped by the wayside or seen as extra or a luxury when it should be treated like any other health condition or health, something that about your body that you need to take care of.
Yes, we're going to talk about that.
Yes. All right. So what we've done, I'm going to throw up the principal themes for today's conversation. Now, before we go over these are just kind of, to give you an idea of what we're going to try and talk about today. But all y'all submitted some really great questions ahead of today's session. So what we did is we kind of distilled those into a core set of questions. We tried to arrange it in a conversational format. But if you took the time to be here and join us live today, we want to make sure that you get what you can, you learn what you came to learn here. So if whether you submitted a question ahead of time or not, or if something just occurs to you while we're talking today, please feel free to jump in, ask questions. Even if you just want to make sure your question gets answered, because I know that these chats, they end a lot more quickly than you think. It goes by really fast. So to that end, like I said, we just want to make sure that everybody knows that space will be held to accommodate, questions from you. We really, really love the participation, especially on really personal chats like today. So don't feel pressured if you don't want to come off mute or don't want to ask questions. That's fine. You can always DM them to me and I'll raise them. But definitely understand that we want you to drive today's conversation. So please feel like you can, ask the questions that you want to know. So in that kind of feeling, we are going to try and cover these following subjects today. The difference between mental health and mental illness, which I think is where we're going to start. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what self-care really means, because it's been kind of like a very big buzzword lately, as well as actions that you can take to have better mental health. So Charity, was there a question you wanted to go over to discuss the difference between mental health and mental illness, or would you like to just start us off with that?
Well, I did get a question about that. What's the main difference between mental health and mental illness? So I thought that would be the best place to kind of start off with. So when we're talking about mental health and mental illness, something to think about is that everyone has mental health, just like everyone has physical health. Not everyone has mental illness. So it's the difference. So when we talk about mental health, we're talking about the way we feel, think, and behave. It is how we deal with daily stresses, as well as manage when we're faced with adversity. So that's key sentence right there. It's the way we manage and we're faced with adversity. When someone experiences mental health distress or challenges, that may happen when you're faced with like a larger stressor than usual. Case in point right now, this past year has been a pandemic. So you're going to notice that your stress has been higher, maybe your anxiety has been higher. And so your mental health may be at risk, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have a mental illness. A mental illnesses are associated with impairments of the brain functions, primarily the brain domains of thinking, perception, emotion, signaling, physical behavior, and experience impairments in these areas causes dysfunctions in our neurons communicating with each other. They cause imbalance of chemicals within our brain circuits. So when mental health challenges can have the characteristics of mental illness as well, but normally you want to have a diagnosis from a mental health provider, especially a psychiatrist or a medical doctor. They're the ones who are going to diagnose you with a mental illness. Because sometimes mental health can have characteristics of mental illness, it's very important to understand that when we're faced with adversity, to look at what's going on. And we're going to talk a little bit about self-care is where you're going to realize how you can identify, are you really having a mental illness, or are you just in a response to mental health? One of the biggest examples I like to think about is, besides the pandemic, grief. So grief can represent like depression, and it can turn into depression if it's not taken care of. But grief is a natural response to someone dying. Unfortunately, I think in our society, and we have this feeling that we shouldn't have negative emotions or negative responses. But it's okay as human beings to have negative emotions and negative responses to situations. So I think we get a little trapped up with, we're supposed to always be happy. We're not always going to be happy. And so sometimes when we get this feeling of negative emotions, we want to cling, we get like, we can't have that, and there's something wrong with me, when it's actually a natural process of our bodies. I hope that clarifies a difference between mental health, which I want to really focus on today, versus mental illness. Just to identify what mental illness, this is going to be like, schizophrenia, PTSD, major depressive disorders, those kind of categories. That's mental illnesses. Mental health can just be, feeling tired or just stressed out, anxiety, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I love that you highlight the fact that, just because you're feeling something and it's not a great positive emotion, doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Like if you go through something traumatic, like you go through a death in the family, or you go through COVID, or, whatever, there's stressors that everybody goes through. And if you don't have any reaction to them at all, I mean, that might be its own problem in and of itself. But having these, going through grief is normal, and and processing it, like it's something that will help your body to go through and help you mentally to go through, as opposed to just trying to either run through it as quickly as you can, ignore it, that kind of thing. And I love the distinction between mental health and mental illness, just because I feel like it's very important to highlight, but it's also important to tell people that, like, and I come at this from like a personal backstory, because I have bipolar disorder, and that's something that it's a mental illness. I hate the term, but it's accurate. That I will likely be dealing with the rest of my life. But, I have like I have friends with depression and anxiety. Now, some of them are lifelong, that will deal with that for a very long time. And it's very intense and wrapped up in their lives. But there's plenty of other people that go through depression and anxiety that don't have it their entire lives. Mm-hmm. So you might be dealing with like general anxiety disorder, which is a mental illness, but it's not to say like that's a label that sticks on you and you're always going to be mentally ill. Like if, and obviously like, terminology is difficult. Everybody prefers different things, but I love the distinction there, because I feel like that's something that, unless you have really personal experience with, dealing with your own mental health, or somebody close to you, it's a distinction that can be very easily lost on people.
Absolutely. And I love how you said, I lost it, but that was very well put, well said, is that, yes, especially with mental illnesses, there's a chronic and acute, right? So if you have depression, you could have chronic, which will probably last for, a lifetime. And then there's acute, which you're going to have at different stages. And the same with PTSD, right? You can have acute PTSD, or you can have chronic PTSD that's going to affect you for the rest of your life. So looking at, and that's something, that everybody individually has to talk with their medical provider, whether it's psychiatrist or psychologist or medical doctor, to identify within themselves what stage they're at.
Yeah. And Cynthia is actually bringing up a good point in the chat, saying, they think there's more of a stigma about mental illness than mental health. And that I would totally agree with. And that's part of the reason I don't like the term mental illness, even though I know logically it's accurate and it's factual. So, okay. But yeah, there's definitely, I feel like we're slowly coming away from the idea that mental health is sort of a taboo thing and that it immediately means mental illness. But yeah, you're right. I definitely think there's more of an enduring stigma with mental illness. So hopefully all of us talking about mental health can help kind of break that down as well.
Absolutely. And there was a question that had come up about the stigma around mental illness and how can we kind of overcome it, or, what's the kind of trend of it. I am a big advocate for people talking about it, just like we're having this conversation right now. We're normalizing mental health, mental illness, mental disorders. If we talk about it, we normalize it, it doesn't have the stigma around it. So let's.
I'm sorry.
Kathleen. Cynthia, go ahead.
Yeah, you can call me Cindy. I don't know why I put Cynthia. And I'm glad you said that we don't have to worry about our hair or anything, because I'm a wreck. But
yes, Cynthia.
Yeah, I am, and I don't have a nice background or anything like that, but my cat's wandering around. But my and Meg, I really honor you for talking about, the bipolar.
Thank you.
Because I don't know if it's the right forum to say it, but you did, so will I, have refractory depression, which means it doesn't respond to normal, and it's exacerbated by loss. And I'm not talking about loss of, like a death, although that's traumatic, but I'm talking about my son going to college, my son getting married,
yeah, those are huge changes.
losing my job, and especially all of these things together, the depression has gone off the charts. So, like, in my mind, mental health is like a piece of cake and a non-issue, which I don't mean that for people who have mental health things, but the mental illness is a nightmare, as anybody who has it knows.
Yeah, and it's different for every person, and it's one of those things. It's like it's a special kind of hell, no matter what you're going through.
It is absolutely it's a special kind of hell. Yes, it is.
Well, thank you for sharing with us. And actually, so that brings me to part of the question that Charity was addressing, is about kind of dismantling that taboo about mental health. Separate from the mental illness side, which I know you said we're kind of more focusing on mental health today. So my apologies. But
no, my apologies. I'm the one who
you're
brought
fine.
it up.
No, you are totally fine, Cynthia.
I feel like that's what this conversation is about, is to separate the meaning so people can understand the differences, and so that we can respect both sides, both things as well, and understand what every person might be going through. And that's another key is, are you having mental illness signs or symptoms, or is it mental health, just negative mental health at the time? So thank you very much, Meg, for sharing that, and Cindy for, speaking up about that, because it's very important that we talk about both.
Yeah. We had a question coming in the chat. This person says, my therapist uses the term behavioral rather than mental. What are your thoughts on using the term behavioral health as opposed to mental health?
So working in the addiction world, we separate behavioral, like addiction, so for your actions and everything, where I guess it could be used interchangeably. I just kind of focus, when I hear behavioral health, I really think about people who, in addiction, because maybe that's my world there. People have behavioral problems, in addiction, such as shopping addiction, or, gambling addiction. So these actual behaviors that they're doing. So, but I think.
Which is important, because it's like you have that addiction issue that is underlying all of this, but the behavior is how you express it, or, how you indulge it.
Right. So maybe, that's, there's some, whatever mental health is going on, and it comes out in a behavior versus an emotion.
Thank you for that. I think that's a really good distinction. Okay, so as we're talking about mental health here, this person had written in asking, how do we create our own awareness for knowing when our mental health is compromised? Because this is hard and it's different for everybody, right? But it's a hard thing to do. Their follow-up was, what's the best way to kind of check in with ourselves? So how would you address this question?
I think the biggest thing, and I know people are going to roll their eyes, but believe it or not, mindfulness, self-awareness is how you can check in with yourself to be able to understand what's going on within you. So if you're really mindful of, like right now, if you've been, I've heard so much, I'm not sleeping, I am so stressed, I'm not sleeping. And I say, well, let's look at the situation. You're not going to work, you're working from home, so your body's not physically exerting itself as much as it was, just even getting dressed and leaving. You are work, you're stressing out, so that's causing you sleepiness. So being aware, just taking those moments of looking at the whole big picture of how you're feeling and then checking in with yourself. So mindfulness is the awareness of what is happening in the moment. So if you're aware that you start to notice different things, you can, within yourself, you can maybe become aware of your mental health is poor or it's getting worse, and that's really where you might need to go see your medical doctor or something to see what's going on. As far as like the best ways to check in with yourself, I say, meditation is great, but there's also things of like daily practices of checking in at the end of the night, at the end of your day, as you're lying in bed, doing a personal inventory of your day. How did what happened today? Was there times where I just was so anxious, or was there times that I felt really depressed? As well as, maybe doing, like journaling. I love to journal, and sometimes journaling can really help me bring out things. And I always do pen to paper for 5 to 10 minutes and not editing myself of that journal. And then when you look back at it, you realize, oh gosh, there's stuff going on with me. So it's really about this mindfulness of self-awareness of what's happening, how you may be different in your life compared to if it was pre-pandemic or a month ago. So really being self-aware.
I love the idea of the journaling, because it's something that is recommended for a lot of different things. But I, personally, I have a mood tracker basically. Now mine breaks it down into like mood versus energy, and you can add different tasks that you do and like chores versus activities. So like, things that make you feel good. And it's really helpful for me because that way I can look back over the month and see like on basically like a super simple kind of graph readout of like, here's the days that you said you were in a good mood. Here's how many days that you said you were in a bad mood or that you had low energy or whatever. And it's like, it's been really helpful because like you said, you can kind of, in hindsight, you can kind of review and see like what's going on without like for me at least, it gives me the big picture, which is really hard to kind of step back and see by yourself. And it can be really difficult if you are, like a lot of people right now, very isolated because of the pandemic.
Is that an app?
Yeah, I think it's called Daylio, Daylio. There's a paid version, but I'm cheap, so I just have the free version.
All right, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Great. It's pretty great. It came very recommended in a bipolar group that I'm in, but it definitely works for, even if you don't have mental illness issues, it's pretty great. All right. So if we're trying to think about these kinds of things, are there like pillars that we should look out for? Like, things that are like hit the high points, like like you mentioned, like, are you feeling overly anxious? Are you not having the ability to like relax and that kind of thing? Are there like a couple like really mainstay ones that you should kind of keep an eye on?
Yeah, I would look at irritability, right? So how are you with communicating with others? Not necessarily just your boss who aggravates you all the time. No, I'm just kidding. But, just looking at your behavior of irritability. We talked about sleeping is probably one of the biggest signs that people overlook of stress. Eating habits. How are you eating? Are you eating more? Are you eating less? As well as motivation. Are you just unmotivated? Look at what you feel like was a good time in your life, and how is that compared to how you're feeling right now? So if you used to get up and work out all the time, or whatever it was that kept you going, have you put that to the side? Are you unmotivated? Are you not meeting deadlines for work and those kind of things? So those are big signs that people can look at to see that there's might be some compromise in your mental health.
Yeah, I like that. It's one of those things where like, if you go kind of more vague, it feels like, well, I just don't know. But like for me, a big part of it was kind of not being able to concentrate on stuff, as well as like, I'm constantly doing like projects. Like I have like kind of home repair stuff, but I also do like kind of more artistic stuff. And when I realized I hadn't done one of those in like probably 3 or 4 months, because I just had no interest and I couldn't pick something I really wanted to do, and I just didn't feel like it. And that was like a huge sign of like, this is something that's been a pretty long standing theme in my life forever. And now I just can't do it. All right. So if you're going through those, kind of ticking the boxes and kind of checking in on yourself, how do you realize, or how could you know when it's time to reach out and get like professional help? Talk to a therapist, or ask your doctor for a referral, whatever your health, whatever your healthcare experience is like. How do you know when to ask for professional help, and if that's the option, or if that's the course you should pursue? What are your options?
So I'm going to just kind of throw something out there about mental health and therapy. So we go to the gym. People like to exercise for our physical health. Why can't we go to a therapist regularly for our mental health? So I'm a big advocate. I go to therapy. I love my therapy. For me, it's where I can just kind of unload and work through everything, just like you do when you go to the gym, So I see no reason why not to continue to always be going to therapy. It's not an ever growing thing, but to go for that. If you do find that there's a persistent and consistent from a few months at a time, and you seem like you may be even going down even worse, whether it's motivation or the different symptoms. I like someone just put in the chat, mental fitness. Yes, mental fitness. Going to therapy is mental fitness. So if you start to notice a consistent and persistent mental health negative feelings, definitely get contact with a mental health provider. Something I always like to remind people is look at the companies you're working at. There's EAP programs. I have been a counselor, work with an EAP company and have helped people through different stresses in their lives. You usually get 8 sessions for free. Check out what your company has to offer for that. But if not, then definitely find a therapist or go to your medical doctor, see what they say, and they might be able to refer you to a provider.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know when I was starting to look around for a therapist, Psychology Today actually has a really great, directory basically. And it really echoed the one that was available from like my insurance provider. But Psychology Today has like a ton of like tick boxes basically, and like filters. So think of it kind of like Amazon shopping versus like shopping on like, I don't know, like a kind of more of like a mom and pop website. It gives you more of the options to like pick things that you really want, or this is, the things I think I need to speak on. I don't want to talk to a man. I'd rather talk to a woman, that kind of thing. So I really liked that. And it gave me I worked out a short list there that I then took back to my insurance provider to see who was like in network and was covered. So if you're at all curious, definitely check that out. I know there's like a ton of like texting apps and stuff, and Better Health and all kinds of stuff that are coming out, but I can definitely speak to Psychology Today.
Yeah, I do too. I've definitely gone and referred to them as well. It's like a dating website for a psychologist or therapist.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. One thing I will put out there, since the pandemic, a lot of companies have been like waivering, what's the cost, the fee, but also telemental health.
Copay, yeah.
Don't shy, copay, thank you. I couldn't think of it for a minute. Don't shy away from the telemental health. When I started switching people over to telemental health, at first people were like, no. And then they realized how easy it is, how comfortable it is to be in your own home, talking through the screen and everything versus the travel to get there, the time you have to take away from work or something like that. So I really encourage people to at least take that, if that's the only thing that's offered to you right now and you really feel like you need some help, do it. Once things open up again, you'll be able to be back in person, or maybe you just want to stay with the telemental health. But I really encourage the telemental health.
I kind of want to stay with tele mental health, not gonna lie. The only thing I will say is if you do the tele stuff, you kind of have to like, I build in like a 15-minute buffer on either side that you'd normally have like the drive to get somewhere, you know, to kind of like think about what you're going to talk about or think over the things that you talked about in therapy. But I build that into my daily, you know, like when I have my therapy appointment, I like, when I block off my calendar, I build that in.
Yes.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about kind of what to check in on with yourself. As far as like signs or symptoms, we talked about like, you know, if you're really far behind on work, that kind of thing. If work is either part of your, you know, stressors, or at minimum, if it's like involved in being affected by this, how can you communicate that to like your leader or your supervisor or your coworkers? Like how do you do that? How should you do that?
Yes. So, you know, it's hard because every culture and, you know, is different in every company. Again, I would say that being authentic and talking about what's going on to a safe person. So if you don't feel safe talking amongst your colleagues or something, your supervisor, that's what they're there for. And if not, then human resource. You know, you can always go to human resource and say, hey, I have some scheduling I have to do for my mental health. And I think we've gotten to a place in work, in work cultures that people are going to be more receptive to it, that they're going to be like, okay, how can we work your schedule? So I think, you know, really being honest and authentic, because we have to open these conversations that everybody does have mental health, and we have to do I'm going to start using this moniker as mental health fitness and mental fitness.
I love that. I think I'm definitely going to pick that up as well. And I think it's important to note, you know, like I'm very upfront about my stuff, mostly because like I'm not special, I'm not unique. It's not like I'm the first person to go through this. And I use it a little bit as kind of a litmus test for people, because if I say something about, you know, my mental health struggles or my mental illness struggles to people, and they're like kind of shitty or dismissive or whatever, like it gives me a little bit of a shorthand. It's like when we used to like go out on dates, and if somebody was rude to the waiter, no, that's a red flag. Like, this is how I kind of treat it now. But like, I think it's also very important to realize that, you know, if you're going out to talk to your, you know, supervisor or something about this, that you don't feel like you have to overshare to drive home the point. Like, talk about what you're comfortable sharing, but it's okay to say like, well, you know, it's for a lot of private things I have going on, but I really need to be supported. And, you know, could we do it this way? Or could you give me this kind of support? Or could we shift some of my projects or whatever? So as leaders, how do we help create those safe spaces for the employees to talk about mental health? And I feel like this is important, even if, whether you're a supervisor or even if you're just a coworker and you know, like somebody's going through something, that professional relationship can be, you know, a little bit fraught. You know, it's not like they're your friend, but they're not, you know, you're not like besties with them, but like they're your coworkers. That's people you get to know over time. So let's tackle it from a supervisor perspective, then we'll go with coworkers, I guess.
So for like leadership or supervisor, I think giving, you know, during supervision, starting the supervision off or starting your meetings off with a kind of personal touch to it. Whether one of my favorite things is I work with a woman. We start every meeting with the first minute of just arriving. Let's just breathe, arrive. And so when you start as a supervisor or a leader, you know, manager, whatever, having this kind of, like, I want to say a holding space for people during meetings, but being approachable, allowing, you know, people to feel safe that they can come and talk to you behind closed doors, and it's not going to get out into the company or whatever, really allowing that. And when one-on-ones, doing the check-in, how are you doing? I had a supervisor who one time knew we were having a rough day if we went into a staff meeting and ate all the candy on the desk. Like, she's like, oh, everyone's having a rough day. Let's shift the gears of this meeting to kind of decompress from what's going on. Tell me what's happening right now that's causing you to have this kind of, you know, anxiety or this emotional eating. So I think as leaders, it's very, again, I'm going to hone in on being authentic and holding space for your employees so that they feel safe to come to you when something happens, or when they're feeling overwhelmed and need to be able to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I think people have gotten a little bit better with this, because I feel like, especially at the start of COVID, that was something that a lot of people hammered home really quickly, right? That we were all going through this and weathering the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. So, check in with your employees, check in with your coworkers, see how they're doing. Don't just treat it like, hey, how are you? Let's dispense with the pleasantries and we'll get to business. Really asking, and then, like you said, holding the space for it. How are you doing? How are you really doing? How's everything going?
Also modeling a little bit of the behavior that you would like your employees or your anyway, of saying to them like, hey, I'm going to take a personal day tomorrow. And you don't have to say necessarily that it's a mental health day, although in the mental health field, we're very much open to saying I'm taking a mental health day tomorrow. But if you don't feel comfortable saying that, saying I'm taking a personal day, modeling that it's okay to take a personal day, modeling that, you know what, I have, some appointments that I have to take in the afternoon, this afternoon or in the morning, so that the people working under you feel comfortable that they can make those appointments. I've worked with bosses that I'm like, I don't feel comfortable, taking time off from work to go to doctor.
People that, you have that like devil wears Prada kind of boss, and you're like, yes. I can't show weakness. I can't say I can't do this. Right. I can't, that's hard.
And then, if you are in that environment and it is causing you are noticing mental health problems, perhaps it's not the place for you as well, right? So that's what we have to look at too. Our environment.
Yeah, that's very important. Absolutely. So I've got comments coming in the chat about people talking about telehealth therapy sessions, how a lot of them don't even need like your camera turned on. So that way you can, if you have like, I know a lot of my friends have kind of not necessarily privacy concerns, but like sometimes you just don't want you don't want to be seen. You just want to talk to somebody. So I feel like that's an important thing to know how to ask for. But so to go back to the question though, I love the idea about modeling the mental health or modeling the behavior you want to see for people. And it, like I said earlier, it's kind of part of the reason that I'm very open about this, because like I'm not embarrassed, and anybody that thinks I should be embarrassed, like that's more their problem than mine. And honestly, like even before I had like a diagnosis and I was just going to therapy and trying to, work some stuff out, whatever, like even at that point, I would put it on my calendar, not like oversharey, but like out of office therapy appointment. I would put it on there. And so that it like kind of held the space and been like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to hide this. And even that, before like I got into a lot of the mental illness stuff, like that small thing made a ton of my coworkers, people who I've never met before in person, by the way, because Powerfly is entirely distributed, made them start coming up to me or to messaging me and being like, hey, like how is therapy going for you? And part of it was concern, and that was lovely and so nice. But yeah, it like also helps people understand that like you have to normalize this. So in what other ways could we support? So if you're like a coworker or a friend or somebody that's going through either a mental health crisis or even just, you can like, they're just not doing great right now. How can you support somebody that is in that struggle?
Yeah. So I would definitely, hopefully, know some boundaries with the person, what are they kind of receptive to? There's some people who, want to share, right? And if they don't want to share, so, just, I think the best approach to people is like, hey, if you ever want to talk, I'm here to talk. And saying like, you want to grab lunch, or, hey, I'm going to the coffee shop. Do you want to come with me? To just kind of open those doors of conversation. Because a lot of times if you do say, hey, I'm here, you're putting it on that person to make the step. When someone might be in a crisis or something, they don't necessarily know, you may not know how to or feel comfortable opening up. So asking for
you feel like it's a pleasantry. You feel like it's something people don't actually mean. It's like,
right.
No. A lot of the times people do mean it.
Mm-hmm. But it puts the action on them versus saying, I'm going to the coffee shop. You want to come with me? 5-minute walk. It just kind of helps maybe take them out of that situation or anything. And then just checking in like, hey, how you doing? Is everything, everything going okay? I'm here if you need anything. Just sometimes those little things can help with, the person going through something, so that they feel like they're being seen. A lot of times, it's about being seen too.
Oh, absolutely.
Hi.
Eri.
I wanted to join in. Hi, my name is Eri. I'm I'm in this meeting. I'm being very open and honest. I'm here with my meeting with my almost 2-year-old right here. So anyways, you might hear some like nursery rhymes in the background. I really appreciate like all of this. And I'm in the fitness industry. So COVID has been really tough for the fitness industry. And it's been really tough for myself, you know, trying to be a trainer and having a very positive outlook on how to kind of work with a child trying to grab things, but also, you know, like the fitness center is like trying to get in a routine of getting exercise. Like mental health does go hand in hand with your physical fitness. And I'm a really big advocate on physical activity, getting some oxygen and like exercising and breathing and like doing all this stuff is like super important. And in the fitness industry, we have a hard time trying to survive through this pandemic because businesses aren't able to stay open. And it's been a really big struggle. And, you know, myself as a trainer wants to help people, and it's so hard. It's hard for myself too, like wondering if I'm going to be able to keep my job and how am I going to help people if our doors aren't open and things like that. But I just wanted to share, it's awesome. And I'm someone who likes to stay busy too. Like I kind of, my symptoms are, I want to stay busy, I want to be active, I want to keep going. And I just wanted to share, like everyone kind of goes through it. I personally keep myself busy because this one runs around, and I also have another one, she's 4 months old. So I'm someone who had a COVID baby, and it's crazy, it's crazy. But I just wanted to share, I'm a mom, I have 2 kids, this one drives me nuts. And we're all in it together. Like physical trainers need like some help too. So if you're able to make it to the gym, you're awesome, you're amazing. But I just wanted to share that, and thank you for hosting this. Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. And I absolutely love the, like, you know, here's my life, here's what's going on, because this is what we've all got happening. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you, Ari, so much. And you know, something I appreciate you popping on, because I forgot how much movement is very helpful when it comes to mental fitness, mental health, right? Movement. When I've had some patients or clients come in that are severely depressed, or, you know, going through some depression, I say, get outside for 15 minutes, just walk around the block, just to get your body movement. Sometimes that can be just helpful to get you through the next hour if you have to step away or something. So thank you for that reminder of like movement.
Absolutely.
Is so important.
I say, a lot of the times I say, do you have a window? Do you have a balcony? Do you have somewhere to kind of step out and just like be present for 5 minutes and just really kind of just breathe?
Yeah, fresh air, vitamin D. Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys can see my screen, but like literally, like if you have a balcony, I say, go outside, open the curtains, and just kind of like be present. And I just wanted to share that. So thank you. I'm gonna keep listening, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
So when we're talking to our friends about this, or talking to a coworker or something, like you said, a lot of it is about asking asking what you can do, or asking how they are. Is there anything else that we either should or shouldn't say to someone going through this, especially like if they do feel comfortable sharing? Because I know like there's a lot of things that people can say that are very well intended, but like don't help, and in some cases can really hurt that, you know, that dialogue you're trying to start.
I think, yeah, there's a lot of things we shouldn't say come to mind first. And I think, you know, things like, oh, you get over it, or, you know, oh, you know, everyone's got problems, and, you know, kind of that nonchalant brushing it off type of way. And I know you think you're helpful when you want to say like, everyone's got stuff going on. Sometimes that can feel like you're really just kind of dismissing that person's emotions. So by saying something like, oh, I hear your emotions, I'm sorry you're, you know, feeling this way. Is there something I can do to support you in that? As well as for me, I can't say when someone's like, oh, get over it. You know, to each other. We don't know how deep a lot of someone's trauma might be, what somebody has gone through, and another time that is now rising in this situation as well. So that it feels like you might be able to get over it quickly when it's bringing up some old past things too, that now that person has to process as well.
I think another wrong thing to say to somebody, because it's been said to me and I don't appreciate it very much, it's, oh, just be grateful for what you have.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes, that is very annoying.
And, yes, I have a car, I have a roof over my head, but, and they're like, you concentrate too much on what you don't have. Well, there's quite a few things.
Well, sometimes you can have all of these other things and be very resourced, but it doesn't quite matter. It's one of those things that people say, like, if you have your health, you have everything. And mental health is such a huge component of that like you could be doing so well and even in a relative universe, like be very well off and still have these things that are very concerning that need attention, that need to be dealt with. I completely agree with you, Cynthia. A lot of things that people have tried to say to me in the past that I know they're very well intentioned, and I know it's one of the things that I try and do, at least to start, is like think about from like the other person's perspective, especially when I have that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, don't say that to me. Yeah. Think like, okay, are they trying to like placate me so they can move on to a new subject? If so, fine, I talk about it with them. But or are they trying to tell me something that they find helpful that just doesn't work for me? Like for my mom, it is like a lot of the like Instagram kind of quotes and they're fine, they're lovely, but like it doesn't help me the same way it helps her.
Exactly.
Those, I'm not like, this doesn't help, stop doing this to me. I'm just like I like heart react it and leave it alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Lynn is actually chiming in the chat with a really good point, saying don't necessarily try to relate by saying, oh yeah, me too. Because if you're trying to ask about the other person, it really shouldn't be about you. And I know that it usually comes from a place of like trying to want to make someone feel heard or make them feel like they're not alone in what they're going through, which is a very like, it's a valiant thing to do. I understand it. She's saying that she keeps this in mind if someone acknowledges that they're bipolar, autistic, wheelchair bound, whatever, that is only a part of who they are as a whole person. And I think that's also a very important thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
I think on that note, Meg, I also like to say that, people, when we have some type of negative emotions, we're experiencing those things. We're not that thing, you have, diagnosed with bipolar, but you're not bipolar. You know what I mean? You have
it's the people first language. Yeah. Which I actually didn't know until a couple of years ago. I have a social worker as my best friend. And like, once I started hearing it from her, it made a lot more sense of like, because you're right. Like I say, like I either have bipolar disorder or I am bipolar, but I don't lead with that. I don't lead like, hi, I'm the girl with the bipolar disorder and my name is Megan. Like, you lead with who you are.
Right.
So as we're going through this, if you're not currently the one, dealing with these struggles, but you're trying to, be there and be supportive for other people, how can you still protect your own mental health, especially if you're living with someone that's going through these issues? The person that wrote this question and says, I get dragged in by this atmosphere that goes on like around my house. And it's got to be a lot harder for, if you're living with somebody, like God bless my husband having to deal with all of this, but like, how do you recommend somebody be supportive without, kind of dragging themselves down with it?
This is where boundaries come into place, and it's really hard to set the boundaries. So you have to really see, I have a saying, if saying yes to you is the detriment to me, I need to say no. It's so hard to say no, especially to someone you care for and, love. But we have to remember something like, if we don't take care of ourselves first, we're not going to be able to help somebody else. We can't take care, we want to take care of children or our elders and stuff like that. But as adults, we want people to be able to take care of themselves. So we have to take care of ourselves. Setting up the boundaries of knowing, all right, so if you're living with someone, and I don't know if it's a loved one or if it's just a roommate situation, but letting them know that like, when you come home, you need an hour to decompress on your own, whether it's in your bedroom or watching TV, or you're going to change and go for a walk to just kind of let go of what your day was about And as well as saying, you know, right now I only have about 15 minutes to chit chat, and then set a timer and say, you know, in the other room, be like, ooh, I got to go. There's, you know, the phone ringing or something like that. But really looking at how you can implement boundaries with that person, because a lot of times people, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. They're going to really want to bring you in. So it's learning to be comfortable with the no, saying no, and setting boundaries.
How do you set boundaries? Because I find that that's the hardest thing, especially with your mother, your
Well,
parents.
especially when you've got those patterns already ground in that are not boundary written,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I had to do this last year with my parents, and it was horribly hard for me.
Yes.
So Charity, what are some of the things you recommend for this?
So you have to look at what for you is, you've realized has just exhausts you or really irritates you. And in that situation, so trying to think of an example, but I have a friend who wants to do something, like every night texts me, you want to go for a walk? You want to go for a walk? Well, I've learned that going for a walk after work is not helpful for me. So I have to keep saying no. And I have learned to say no without an explanation, because then
That's the hard part.
So
Yes,
really,
that is, because especially when it's your parents.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca. That I wanted to make sure I called you out. That was a great question. So thank you so much.
Yes,
They're
and it is
expecting
so
you to say something like, okay, what's next? What are
Right.
you about to say? And I do have a question too. I have a girlfriend. She's having a lot of marriage problems, but it seems like I've become her like every day. I'm texted with just negativity, and I try to be there, but sometimes I feel like I have my own problems too. I can't handle this right now, you know, but I don't know. Like, instead of just saying it to her, I just like don't text back, because I cannot deal with this right now. So how
sometimes that's all you can do, you know, like, so if that's all you can do is, you know, if that's all you're comfortable with, or you don't have the energy to, you know, kind of build up more or explain more about it. Yeah, even just having the radio silence, like, you are protecting yourself. You can always deal with her later. You're not her emergency contact. You're not the only person that she can turn to about this. So yeah, I mean, like, Charity, I'm sorry, I don't mean to step all over you. You go right ahead.
No, you're completely right. Sometimes it is okay to just have the not respond, and that's sending a message as well. But also, if you know, if it's we don't want to hurt people's feelings, but sometimes to protect ourselves, we're setting that boundary. They're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. They're the ones who are kind of putting you out. So remembering that you don't have to always not hurt someone's feelings, right? Sometimes you might have to hurt someone's feelings. They'll get over it. If they don't, I think most people who are friends care, and they do end up getting over it. But really, it's just placing that boundary is so important. So if you have your friend who's texting you all the time, something I've done is turned off my notifications. And then when I'm ready to kind of interact with the person, I will then interact with that person. Or I will say, yes, turning off the notifications. Or saying, hey, you know what? I got a busy week ahead of me. How about we set some time this weekend? We can grab a coffee and, you know, dedicate an hour, but have a good out. Like, you got to be out, you know, by 11 a.m. I've got another appointment I've got to get to. And so then you give that person that time, and then, you know, hopefully they won't continue to text you or whatever. Like, they get everything that they want off of their chest at that time.
And I have another question.
Yeah, go for it.
This is with my mother, but and most of my relatives, where I'm trying to set boundaries. They don't like it, but I've already said it. But then afterwards, it makes me feel like I'm the bad guy.
Oh yeah, that is
how do I
real.
deal with that with myself? You know, because you feel guilt, you feel false guilt, and then you start to cave in, because it's like
because you feel like if you're holding that boundary, like you're the one that's wrong. Yeah.
You know, it's like, especially when a family is very dysfunctional, nobody seems to understand that this is my truth. You need to accept it. so I start caving in
Mhm.
because, and then I, and then I get angry. It
Mhm.
goes back to this cycle where it's like, ugh.
Right. I completely understand. And good for you for setting that boundaries and saying it. You've done the first part of it. The only other part I would say is not giving in, as guilty as it's going to feel. And there's always going to be some form of guilt you're going to feel just because we're human beings, right? So that's kind of that emotion that we think we shouldn't feel, but it's very normal to feel that emotion. But what I would say is the more you stand in yourself, the more you stand with your boundary, the less the guilt is going to feel. As far as it comes with your family, they gotta figure it out. It's on them to figure out how to. They want you to stay the way they want you to stay, but you are evolving as who you are as a human being. And so what works for them is not working for you anymore. So the more you get kind of staying in that place and keep saying no, the guilt is going to not be as strong, but I really encourage you to just not cave. Just not cave as much as it's so painful. They will over time adjust.
Yes.
They will adjust, and I think that there comes a point where you become an enabler.
Mhm.
And if you allow people to continue to take from you and take from you and take from you, then you're enabling them to continue whatever it is that's going on. And I don't think in the case where there's, she's being texted every 5 minutes by her man, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with suggesting in a loving way, have you thought about maybe marriage counseling or something? Maybe,
Well, and I've had it with friends in the past where I've had to say like, hey, I want to be there and support you, but I think this is way above what I can handle, or I don't think I can give you good advice.
Good
And
suggestion.
Rebecca, what you said about your parents, like I completely, like I feel you hard on this. What worked for me, because I'm very empathetic, and like somebody being upset, whether it's at me or not, like it sends me into panic of like, what can I do to fix it? So something that helped with me was state, like, like for my parents, it was a lot about like, we don't talk about politics, which I hate because I feel like as a white cisgender middle class female, I have the responsibility to use my access to certain people and access to certain rooms that other people like BIPOC members, underprivileged, under-resourced people will not have. So that's really hard for me to like not have these conversations, but realizing that it was so detrimental to my own mental health, I had to like stop having these conversations with them. Doing that was hard, but what I kept doing was coming back to, if they told me that they were uncomfortable with something I was doing, I would not ask questions. I would not try and undermine it because A, they're my parents, but B, like, if you love and respect people, that's what you do. They tell you something they don't want you to do anymore, and you don't do it. The other thing that really helped was saying it and then waiting, because it feels so, there's so much pressure to explain and try and make them understand. And you want them to want this for you. You want them to want you to be happier. Say what set your boundary and then wait. And either they will accept it or they'll keep on it. And then I had to learn the very hard way that my presence is the only like leverage I have. I don't throw a fit. I don't storm off. I don't make a big scene. I'm just like, okay, I have to go quietly pack up my things and I leave. And I only had to do that once before they started to respect the, hey, I know we said we weren't going to talk about this, so why don't we change the subject? And it's really hard. I am not going to lie to you. It is hard and it took freaking months, but one time of leaving was all it took. So keep it in mind, small victories, even if you're not ready to like take that huge stand, keep working towards that to like set that boundary for yourself. All right.
Thank you, Meg, for that. Thank you. That was fantastic.
I'm so sorry. I've like talked way more in this chat and I feel horrible because like we wanted to learn from you. Before we go, is there anything that we haven't touched on of the millions of things we haven't touched on that you really wanted to leave us with today?
I think we touched on it, but I just want to reiterate, talk to everybody, like tell people what's going on with you when you're comfortable. Let people know mental health is important. Let's try to change the stigma around mental health. And, mental health, I love it, is mental fitness. Work on it. Do the things that are going to take care of you. Self-care is about taking care of you. boundaries is self-care.
Yes, I absolutely love that. I want to say a huge thank you, Charity, for, coming here, spending time with us today. It's not even just the hour you spent with us, like there's prep that goes into this too. Huge thank you for coming in and sharing your information and your experience with us.
Thank you so much. This was so wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you for everybody who joined in and everything.
Bye-bye.
I'd love to come back again.
We would love to have you back. In fact, I think we definitely need to have at least one more of this.
Thank you.
Huge thank you to all of our participants, everybody that watched us via YouTube or on our live stream on our website or came into the Zoom room today. Y'all submitted great questions. I love the participation. I'm so happy so many people came off mute to comment and ask questions. Thank you so much for coming with respect and curiosity and just kindness. It can be, especially now, really challenging to lead with those things, especially when we're all scared and nobody knows what we're doing. But you know what? We didn't know what we were doing 5 years ago. It was the first day any of us had done 5 years ago, and we got through it. So thank you so much to all of you. I hope you have a lovely rest of your Monday. And we've got a bunch of more chats coming up this week. I'll be on, I think, 2 or 3 of them. So please come back for more free resources. And hopefully we'll have many more chats with Charity like this. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.